So we're looking at multiplying, dividing fractions visually. So we want to make sure that you can draw pictures to represent multiplication and division of fractions. So one of the models we used for fraction multiplication was a fraction of a fraction. So we're going to just practice this here. So if we have 2/3 of a whole, okay, so I'm going to take this whole piece. So we're going to say that the circle is one whole, and I'm going to have 2 out of 3. So 2 parts out of 3 parts whole. So we can rewrite 2/3 of a whole as 2/3 times 1/2. Yeah, we can say 2/3 of a whole is 2/3 times 1/2. So we can then use this translation of is equating to times when we talk about fractions. So we're going to start with a 3/4 fraction here. So I'm going to take this fraction and I'm just going to shade 3/4 of it. Okay, so that's 3 out of 4 parts I've shaded in. So that represents 3/4. And I want 1/3 of that 3/4 fraction. Okay, 1/3 of that 3/4 is 1/3 of the shaded piece. So conveniently, the shaded piece has 3 pieces, so I'm going to shade 1 out of the 3 pieces. So it looks like, compared to the whole, the answer would be 1/4. Okay, so 1/3 of 3/4 is going to be 1 out of 4. Okay, so that's, and the picture again doesn't lie. So we can then, since 1/3 of 3/4, we can translate that of as times. We can say that 1/3 times 3/4 is going to be equal to 1/4. So is the statement of 1/3 of 3/4 the same as the statement of 1/3 times 3/4? The answer is definitely a big yes. Okay? Yes. So the big idea then is of can be interpreted as multiplication when we talk about fractions. Okay, so let's rewrite some of these statements. So 1/3 of 3/4, 1/3 of 3/4 can be written as 1/3 times 3/4. Okay, and this is supposed to say 2/3 of 1/4 as a multiplication statement should be 2/3 times 1/4. Again, so we should actually do this multiplication, and we can use our top times top, bottom times bottom, okay, and we have the answer of 1/4, which we got before. 2/3 of 1/4 is 2/3 times 1/4, and this one would work out to be 1 out of 6 or 2 out of 12, which reduces to 1 out of 6. And 1/2 times 4/5, well, we can write that as a word statement as 1/2 of a 4/5 fraction. Okay, so 1/2 of 4/5. So again, we can show this fraction of a fraction by looking at, okay, we start with 1/3. Okay, so I'm going to draw this fraction in. So I'm going to do 1/3 like this. Okay, so I'm going to divide that hexagon into thirds in this way. So here's going to be my 1/3 fraction here. Okay, looks like I have 8 pieces that make up that 1/3 piece. And I want 1/4 of the 1/3 fraction. So if I want 1/4 of that, I can divide that 1/3 piece into 4 equal pieces. And I only want 1/4 of that 1/3 piece. Okay, so what does that look like as a multiplication statement? That's going to be 1/4 times 1/3. Okay, my picture shows me that it's going to be one piece out of, well, if I chop that into the same size pieces here, there's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So it's going to be 1 out of 12 pieces. And again, our top times top, bottom times bottom seems to work in this case. Okay, so clearly our picture doesn't lie. Okay, we want to make sure that we rely on our picture, because the picture is the best way to do math. It's the most reliable because pictures don't lie. So 1/4 times 2/3. Okay, we can show this one as a picture, so we can kind of figure out what this should look like. We should end up with 2 twelfths. So what is this going to look like? Well, we can start with a 2/3 fraction. Okay, so I'm going to start with my 2/3 fraction. So here's my 2/3. I'm going to shade it in yellow. 1/3, 2/3. So of this 2/3 fraction, I want 1/4 of it. So to get 1/4 of it, I'm going to have to chop it up like this. So those are 4 pieces now that make up the 2/3. And I'm going to shade that in. So of the whole, we can see that that represents 1 out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This represents 1/6 of the whole. Okay, and if I do our top times top, bottom times bottom, I get 2 out of 12, which again will then reduce to 1/6. Okay,